And good afternoon to those of you on the US and Canadian East Coast, or I guess early good evening. Good afternoon to those on the West Coast in US and Canada, and an early good morning to those here in Australia, New Zealand, and the Asia Pacific region. Good morning. Hello, my name is Michael Haynes, business growth specialist for small and medium B2B professional service firms, and welcoming you to another episode of Breaking Thru in B2B. Breaking Thru in B2B, for those of you who have not been here before, is a live stream show to insight, inspire, educate those of us that are leading, building, and growing small and medium B2B professional service firms. And so today's topic is AI and business growth strategy for us in the world of B2B SMBs. Is it a game changer? Is it risky? Should we be using it? How should we be using it? These are some of the questions we're going to delve into and uncover with my guest today, Steve Jenkins, AI Adoption Specialist. Steve, good morning. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For the viewers, as well as those listening on recording, please tell them a bit about yourself.
Certainly. First of all, thank you for having me on the show, Michael. It's an absolute honor to be here, so I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to what is always an energetic conversation. Now, for the viewers at home, I'm just to give you a bit of an introduction. I'm a 20-year veteran of professional services, so I've worked in the industry for quite some time. And of recent years, I have been working within the AI space. Now, just to be really clear, I am not a technology boffin. I'm not a developer by trade. I'm far more interested in how we utilize AI tools in our workplace, how they sit alongside people and how they help us improve our tasks. I've worked with companies of all sizes, from startups, of which I am currently a founder, to enterprises globally. So I have seen I've run the gambit of AI adoption and seen the good and the bad. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you guys today.
Great, Steve, and thanks for that introduction. And again, it's very much because while you are now very much working in the AI space, but you do come from that strategy approach, how we are going to utilize it. Those are those very exact reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today. For those of you watching live via LinkedIn, other streaming, if you're live, please do say hello and let us know where you're dialing in from. If you have any questions as we're going through and having this discussion, because it's going to be very much an interactive discussion with Steve and myself, please do put those in the comments as well. So Steve, I want to kick off. AI, it is the buzzword that is on top of everyone's minds, of those running businesses, building businesses, thinking about getting into running and building and growing businesses. And we're hearing lots of news around AI and all of that. And like I said, today we're focusing in where it fits in with respect to helping us build our strategy to build and grow businesses. But I want to kind of start off with first principles. What exactly is AI, and the term in particular, generative AI? Because that's something that has kind of been thrown around when people talking about different tools and the context which they've been used. So for those of us that have a very embryonic or no understanding about AI, can we start off with that? What exactly is generative AI?
Sure, and you've really not started out in the shallow end, have you? That we're really jumping into the deep end here. It's a deceptively hard question to answer. Look, I think the way I'll tackle it is I will split it into. So there's AI and then there's generative AI. For me, AI is simply, I use the word simply in loose terms, a collection of computer systems that have been designed to synthesize human reasoning in order to perform tasks. And so it's approximating intelligence. It's approximating what a human might do in to achieve a certain task. Will that task be turning lights on, or writing an email, or detecting cyber patterns in credit card transactions, for example? It's approximating human intelligence. Generative AI is a subset of AI. And generative AI, as the name sort of indicates, is all about generating something. So it's AI to generate something. The great bulk of the things that it generates is content. And that content could be video, text, photography, any number of different formats that humans use to communicate. And I think that's the really interesting point here. It's generative AI literally generates content.
Right.
But for me, the interesting point here is that actually, what do businesses do and how do businesses use what generative AI has produced to better their competitive stance? That to me is the exciting part.
And you and I, Steve, are very much aligned on that, because that's very much the question in a strategic context that I really want to unpack and kind of discuss today. So in terms of, with that in mind, the Hinge Research Institute has just recently put out, every year they do their high growth firm study, where they do a global study of high growth firms in professional services, so in our world, accounting, technology, law, consulting, etc., to understand, what are the priorities, drivers, behaviors. What are these high growth firms? And they define high growth firms as those firms that are getting 20% growth year on year and over a minimum of a 3-year period. What are those firms doing? What are they focusing on? What are some of the key characteristics? This latest study for 2025 has found, in terms of, what are some of the key challenge areas that they're looking to dive into, is, no surprise, AI number 1. But then the second, number 2 and 3 areas were around strategy and around client experience. I kind of see the two as going together, because given the dynamics in B2B, particularly the way our buyers buy and the complexity and what they expect, having strategies to acquire, retain, and grow them, knowing what you have to do strategically to manage, nurture our clients is quite important. So with that in mind, going back to your comment, be curious to know, in terms of generative AI, what are some of the things, now thinking about from a strategy point of view, and we start to think about some of the inputs to develop the strategy, what are some of the roles of where AI can fit when we're looking to thinking in terms of some of those inputs to create the strategy to build and grow our businesses, to nurture, acquire, support our clients? Can you give us some guidance, some of your perspective on that?
Yeah, of course. Happy to. And again, a massive topic for us to cover off. I feel that we could have a conversation on each of those elements on their very own. Now, gosh, where to start? So I think when we're thinking about the strategic process, in my mind, there is sort of key phases. There's the defining the problem or the challenge you're going to be solving. There is the research and analysis phase, and then there's the sharpening of the strategy and the communication phase.
Yeah.
Very, very loosely speaking. And I think AI, in particular generative AI, and also just for context here, when I'm talking about generative AI, I'm talking about everyday tools here. The tools that we all have access to, the tools that are by and large free or very low entry point. I'm not talking specialized tools. So anyone,
just to cut in there, just for the benefits for some folks that still may be rather new to AI, when you say some of the tools that are freely available that can help us with some of these steps to try, what sort of tools are you referring to? Just I want to be for the benefit for those that might be very new to this topic. What are some of those free common tools that you're referring to?
Yeah, of course. I suspect everyone is aware of ChatGPT as an example. I suspect a lot of people are increasingly aware of Google's offering, which is Gemini. There is another offering which I find particularly useful for research and analysis from Google, which is their Notebook product.
Okay.
And for those who are interested, there's also obviously China's latest edition, which is DeepSeek. Bless you.
Yeah.
And actually, funny you mention it, popped into my inbox last night. Brand new onto the scene is a new AI tool that is currently, I believe it's in, I'm guessing it's in beta phase because they're offering free usage of it. I think just to get adoption.
Okay.
It's a website called 55MV, so that's M for Michael, V for Victor, and it's an AI tool specifically for strategy,
Okay. Great.
and creative strategy as well.
Okay, so thanks for that. And we might come back and revisit some of those tools later. But coming back to our discussion here, I just want to make sure everyone was familiar with some of the tools. Now that, okay, so with regard to some of these tools, can you kind of take us through, you've just talked through some of the kind of 3 core fundamental levels, phases as part of the inputs for strategy development. Where does that fit? How can we be leveraging the likes of some of these AI tools, be it the ChatGPT, Google, if we're thinking, for example, from a research and analysis perspective, which is, where it's often a key fundamental, gaining understanding of our industries, our markets, our competitors, understanding about our clients and customers. Where does AI tools can fit in terms of helping us with that critical component of strategy development?
Yeah, okay. So specifically around the research and analysis phases, that sort of middle phase I was referring to earlier, I personally find AI really useful for doing a number of tasks. One, synthesizing large data sets. So those data sets may in fact be numerical data sets, CSV files, or they could be text-based. I was actually chatting with someone yesterday who is looking to implement AI in their organization for the whole role of helping them get through the avalanche of information that is arriving at their desk. So, for their role, they need to consume lots of annual reports, and this wouldn't be unfamiliar to most of our viewers in professional services. We all need to consume lots of information, and so AI can really sort of help shortcut that. Notebook in particular is useful for that in terms of synthesizing data. That's my sort of personal choice. In terms of the analysis phase, when we're digging through research and then starting to look at what that research tells us. Actually, one of the things I find really helpful is making sure that you're taking into account other people's perspectives. So if we're talking customer experience or client experience in professional services, I think it's very useful to ask the question, what would so-and-so who has this perspective or has this job, what would they think if I said this to them or if I show them this communication? And just that ability to analyze things from other people's perspectives is a really useful for strategists.
Okay, great. Okay. So with regards to leveraging the AI tools for the research and the synthesizing, is there any key principles or watch outs with respect to, because there's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So in terms of how we frame and contextualize the scope of the research that we're looking to do, let's say we're looking to do a competitor analysis. Let's say I'm going to use one of my IT strategy MSP firms, for example. If we wanted to understand the landscape of the IT MSP market for mid-markets, is there anything about framing, I guess, the areas of inquiry and analysis that we need to be mindful of as part of the input to ensure that we're gathering, collating the right kinds of information? Is there any guidelines that we should be watching out for?
I think the most important element here that you're sort of you're sort of alluding to here is I guess the integration of your own experience and the capabilities of AI to process large volumes of data concurrently. What I mean by that is, if you ask AI basic questions, you will get basic answers.
Okay.
If you use your personal experience to paint a vivid picture of what task you want the generative AI to complete, and because you're an experienced professional, you know that in order to answer that question, the AI will need to include specific sources of data, or information, or it would need to output it in certain formats. If you include that in your original request, the output that you're going to get is going to be so much richer. And so I personally have a philosophy of rising tide lifts all boats. So for me, it's as much about understanding how we can all learn how to better utilize AI, and how we can use that AI to augment our already highly skilled professions. The ultimate result is a much better output and product for your customers. And I think that's one of the lenses that I apply. Is this enriching my client's experience, customer's experience, or is this actually decreasing the experience? With AI, I think there is a risk of either scenario occurring. So it really is about making sure that there is a human in the loop.
So as you're talking, Steve, I'm kind of thinking this is kind of similar to almost putting together a research brief, which is something I did a lot in my previous life when I worked at Telstra as head of wholesale research, and we're having to brief out the agency almost in terms of setting up the parameters, the scope. And I think the more you can specify, I want to look at, let's say, if we're looking at an industry analysis, these kinds of organizations, these sizes, these kinds of firmographic characteristics, we're looking to understand these particular dimensions. So kind of really as much as you can in detail specifying those parameters, those requirements based on lived experience, based on my experience and knowledge of that industry, that particular market, leveraging team members to maybe give that input to that brief. So to almost view, I'm thinking in my mind, looking at the AI tool as sort of like it's the research house, it's a research conduit, and specifying the brief with the right kinds of parameters based on lived experience, knowledge of the industry, the requirements, what you're going to do with it, and getting the input from yourself and your other colleagues, other industry, and using that to brief in and use that as an input that will help give the right kind of output that you require. Is that a fair, that's kind of went through in my head as you were talking. That's kind of how I kind of analogous to it. It's like, oh, this is like when you're doing a research brief and you need to kind of give those parameters, scope, requirements. And so if you treat it in that context, in terms of what you put in, then that should help in terms of the quality of the output.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's an excellent way of thinking about it. And just to elaborate on that a little bit more, I think your example sort of highlights how non-AI expertise and experience are applicable in an AI world. Because you're writing that brief, you're understanding the parameters that need to be considered. But also, and this is something that I can't stress enough, because you've written that brief, because you have that experience, you can interrogate the output of the AI to make sure that it isn't hallucinating, because that is a reality. The AI, if you go back to my original definition of AI, it's synthesizing human reasoning. Synthesizing. It's not actually reasoning. It's synthesizing it. So it can make mistakes, and this is where a professional and an expert in a subject area comes in and goes, okay, that answer is not right. Now let me go back to the brief and see why you took that leap, and adjust the brief.
Great. Okay. So so using the AI, and making sure we're briefing it in, and then sense checking what comes out. Now, as part of the sense checking in terms of what's coming out, and sense checking versus our lived experience, our industry knowledge, I was speaking with AI strategist in New York earlier this week, who was saying also, but be mindful, have somewhat of an open mind as to the outputs, because the outputs from the AI analysis can sometimes give you hints of clues. I think blind spots was what Sadio Jones used. What is your view on that in terms of, as part of that sense checking? Do we need to be keeping that bit of open mind? Is there the propensity for AI to potentially, as part of that analysis, give us some clues as to, untapped opportunities or missed opportunities or things that are overlooked that we should be mindful of? What is your view on that, on that as well, as part of that sense checking review of the output?
Yeah, great. I think I'd like to attack that question in a couple of parts, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, to start with, can AI lead us to blind spots and areas where actually the answer isn't as valid as it might appear on the surface? Absolutely. And I think that is a particular challenge with the tools that we are talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, that we listed out earlier. So the free or the very low cost to entry tools. And that's partly because they haven't been trained specifically for your application, your business area. And they do not have access to your company data or your company history.
Right.
So your reality is your reality. There is a certain element of your company's DNA that goes into every single response or client expectation or customer proposal or even value proposition you bring to market. So they're not going to have all that context. So absolutely, it can lead you down blind spots. But again, this is where the human in the loop is able to adjust course.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, as a short plug for my AI startup, is that some of us are actually working around that problem. So how do we bring actual company context into the conversation so that we're training the AI to actually provide answers that are specific to my scenario in a secure and safe way? So that's the first first part of the answer. The other part of my answer that I want to sort of bear with me as I sort of jump categories here a little bit. You were talking about sense checking and blind spots. The other thing that I find really useful with AI is rapid scenario planning and modeling. So you get an initial answer from AI, or you as a owner or a professional service expert have an instinct as to a value proposition you want to put out in the market, and you want to just validate it very quickly. You throw it into, say, ChatGPT, being very careful to not put any of your personal company data into that prompt at the same time. You get an answer. It's not quite what you expected. No problems. change the prompt, run the scenario plan. Okay, you're getting closer. Now you want to understand it from, say, 10 other people's different perspectives. Tell the AI who those 10 people are, or what those 10 job titles are in our world, and it'll provide an evaluation of that. So your blind spot or your dead end has now become a avenue for further exploration, which you've done rapidly. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to market immediately. Personally, I would then go and have conversations with people about it to back that up. But it's gotten me to that place where actually the conversations I'm having with customers or prospective customers is far more valuable for both of us. My ideas are far more formed and more relevant to that customer from the very start.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would tend to agree with you. I think there could be a lot of validity in terms of leveraging AI to do some of that model scenario validation, that analysis, and seeing what you're coming up with, and then doing that sense checking. I would argue that you're quite right, though, that you want to be doing some of that sense checking with other folks, being other members within your team, potentially some strategic partners. If you are able to do so with some of your clients, with some decision makers within your clients, through some various different means that I've used, so you can get that sense to really understand the relevance, because there is, as you said, there is a lot of complexity, again, coming from that B2B perspective. There's quite a lot of complexity in terms of what buyers are looking for, in terms of their expectations, how things are worked, the requirements of their end customers, because the world is getting fluid, more evolving. Everyone's trying to be more disruptive, more creative. You yourself are now running a startup and doing great, new, different things. So I think the ability to have that interaction where you can immerse, inquire, tease, pull apart to say, we've done these scenarios A and B, AI's come up with C. Now let's talk to some of our constituents who have very complex, changing, fluid requirements. Does this make sense? Why not? What's missing? What can be incorporated from A, B, or C to come up with? So I'm fully with you there. I would emphasize that the need for that human interaction involvement, and where you can get it also inclusive with your potential clients, your decision makers as well, will have a lot of potential impact. So I'm fully with you on that. From a scenario modeling point of view, any other suggestions, tips, Steve? Because I think that is a great component that should be incorporated as part of the analysis and your strategy development. Is there any other tips, principles that you think we should be mindful of and considering?
Yeah, I think when it comes to scenario planning and modeling, really just step back and think, what is it that you need to understand to know if your strategy is going to be successful or unsuccessful. Strategy in whatever purpose or role it's playing. Ultimately, these things come down to how well they're received by a target audience, how commercially viable they are. Both of those things can be deconstructed and scenario planned. Most of our listeners will be doing this anyway. Yep. They'll be researching, they'll be running A/B tests, they'll be running geographic tests, or they'll be running financial modeling within Excel or their finance system. You can do the same with AI, and you can do it a lot faster. I think at this point, I've mentioned data a few times and company data a few times. So I just want to interrupt this flow for a second and just want to make sure that everyone is I guess aware of one of the challenges of AI, and that is that the free tools, the common tools that we use, there are the information that you put in can be communicated out to the web. So the model may use your information, not prescriptively, but take a general sense of it into consideration for future prompts. Easy get around. What we have done in the past is pull together a risk register where we've gone through our organization and outlined the different types of information that we have within the organization and what the risk is if it were to go public. So commercial data, highly confidential, massive risk. Therefore, we've established guidelines within our organizations to say that should never be put into an AI tool. If you need to put some modeling in, some numbers in, use percentages, use anonymized data, and infer from that. So I just wanted to be really clear. You do need to be very careful about what data you put into AI and make sure it's not your confidential data. If it's publicly available data, then it's already out there anyway, so there's no risk to that. But I would really recommend that when you're thinking about AI adoption, is part of it is think about that risk register of information sharing. You're on mute.
Oops. So thanks.
It has to happen once in every video call.
Yeah, it hasn't happened for me for a while, so I'm due for that because there's background noise on the balcony here. So that for me reinforces the need why, in terms of how we develop strategy and our different kinds of analyses that we have to be doing, we still need to be, I think, doing those very much from a human standpoint, and again leveraging the analysis, what we can get through AI tools, with that filter, that sense check, that we still have to we have to be mindful what we put into it, and then sense check it and see how it marries up, integrates what we've done through our own, I'm going to call traditional analysis, which takes into account human experience, industry expertise, client nuances, trends, etc. That we know as professional service folks, for which we are to be experts of our world, and we have a lot to bring, that we have to kind of marry the two together and be cautious. So it's not the be all and end all. It's very much a tool that can help us look and for consideration, but that human element to interrogate, validate, refine, augment and build upon, and leveraging our industry expertise, the nuances, that all of that human stuff is still a critical component. That's what I'm hearing from you. Okay.
I can agree more, and I actually really enjoyed the slight slip of tongue there, the be all and the AI all of it all. I thought that's actually very good. I love that.
I think I've been talking to you for too much now. You're having me doing all these things now. Very good, very good.
But it does actually make me think. So we're sort of talking about adoption of AI and yeah, what you were just talking about, which I think Google refers to as human in the loop. And I guess if I was to, summarize the things I would be considering if I was a leader of a professional services firm when adopting AI, I think I'd probably put it into let's say four categories.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So the first one would be to play, and let your staff play and be clear that there is permission to play. Because there's a high chance that they are already. And you might want to control that, which I think is the second principle that I would be thinking through, is what are your controls and guidelines?
Okay.
So I've already spoken about the risk register that we've done. That's one of our control mechanisms, so that people understand exactly what they can and cannot share with a generative AI. But other things are looking at what your vendors are doing. So your vendors may well be using AI, and what your client contracts ask. They may actually ask for you to disclose if you're using AI in certain situations. So, so like risk registers, control, what tools can be used and which tools cannot be used. You may have certain preferences of which tools you feel are more appropriate for your organization now. And I think and then the final thing is, what is the general areas of usage that you'd like to promote? For us, for example, we focused very much on the research and analysis phase, as we've been discussing today. All of that was just so that we could get to the meaty bits faster and actually start to solve problems faster and spend more time in that problem solving phase instead of the data assimilation phase.
Yeah.
That was our strategy. And so if you think about it in those sorts of contexts, it's sort of giving people both the permission to play and the guide rails on which they can play. The third thing I would advise or guide, if I can, is to set up mechanisms to share.
Okay.
I come from a industry where we have quite siloed teams, and they all perform very, very different functions. And so at the start, there was a hesitancy. You know, what we do over here is not relevant to what they do over there. But going back to my sort of belief of the rising tide lifts all ships, the learnings between each team were fascinating because each team are looking at the usage of AI in a different perspective. And so actually just the cross-sharing of those learnings, whether they be company meetings, whether they be newsletters, whatever format is right for you, I think is a really powerful way to do it. And then the fourth thing for me is simply just start. I know the learning curve can be painful, but you have to be on the curve to learn. So you may as well get on it, and that way you can assess whether it's right for you or if it's not, and where it's right and where actually your own company systems are superior or provide a competitive advantage. So you really need to sort of toe in, but do it in a safe and considered way, purposeful way.
Right. Okay. And in terms of getting started in a safe, considered way, dipping your toe in, what would be a recommendation how to do so? Would it be to maybe start on a small project and initiative, and maybe as for one of your steps of doing some of the research and analysis, you do a mini brief and say, okay, we have to study, let's say, 5 competitors. Let's take 1 or 2, and we're going to use and create some parameter specification, and let's analyze what for those out of the 2 out of the 5 we'll do through AI. We'll do the rest through our normal means, see what it comes up. So is it kind of like starting small projects, small steps of projects, initiatives as part of that getting started? Again, in a strategy context.
Yeah, absolutely. Running AI enabled versus I call it traditional, for want of a better word, projects simultaneously is a great way to start and share the pitfalls. From an organizational perspective, though, I think I have found the best way to start is an open dialogue with everyone to say, hey, tell me how you're using AI right now. Share with us what your current adoption is, because that's going to give you the management information you need to be able to understand, actually, is there already a wealth of knowledge that's untapped and you just need to divert that in terms of AI adoption in your organization? Or is there a lot of fear within the employees base on the adoption of it, in which case we need to think about how to alleviate some of that fear. That sort of moratorium on AI adoption, I think, gives you a great platform to start having conversations and to start producing the guidelines and control mechanisms that are going to help you and your people and your customers feel confident, feel empowered. And I think those are the sorts of starting places from an organizational perspective. I would start, and then from a project perspective, let's run these two babies side by side and see how they run.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense in terms of practical.
Well, that's a first for me. So thank you. I'll take that.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to have this discussion and taking us through, talking about, what is generative AI and what are the ways that we can be leveraging it from a strategy point of view. I think there's lots of discussion around content and all the other things, but for us being as professional service firms, organizations, specialists, where, delivering advice and helping to drive commercial outcomes strategically, and where does this tool fit and how to leverage it. And it's a tool. I think at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's an enabler to help us do some of the key components faster, inspire some of our thinking, but by no means is it a replacement for our the work and the innovation, the creativity, industry, client responsiveness that we can provide, but it can really augment our ability to deliver to those requirements. So thank you so much. Steve, any final words as to how folks can get in touch with you, connect with you if they want to learn more about your startup, your particular brilliance in particular? How can folks get in touch with you?
That's very, very kind of you. Absolutely, get in touch with me through my LinkedIn profile. My website is in my profile. Drop me a request, a connection request. I'm always happy to meet up and chat with people about this sort of stuff. It personally fascinates me, so you're doing me a favor. So please don't be shy about connecting through. I also, because of my interest in this area, am connected with a lot of specialists in the area. So if I can't answer your question, then I'm sure I can scrounge around and find someone who can.
Fantastic. And folks, details of Steve as well as myself will be on the notes once this goes on the YouTube channel. So that concludes today for this episode of Breaking Thru in B2B. Steve, thank you again so much. And for those of you watching live, thanks for contributing. If you have any questions in terms of some of the things we talked about that was not covered off, please send us a note on LinkedIn, drop a note in the comments. And until next time, wishing you all the very best and a great rest of your respective days. Thanks and bye for now.
Bye for now.